Hello and welcome to Forever Sports. Welcome to Rugby Unlocked and a very, very exciting episode because it's really starting to get real. The greatest rivalry, or rugby's greatest rivalry tour, really heating up this weekend. Boks versus the All Blacks. We are seeing a war of words at press conferences. We are seeing Spygate stuff. Mr. Meyer, who's joining me from down in Cape Town. I mean, the tension's been building, but I'm not sure we kind of expected this kind of tension, did we?
Absolutely, Steve. Hi, welcome to everyone joining us today again on a lovely episode of Rugby Unlocked. Steve, I think you've been in the thick of things. I'm down here in Cape Town, spending some time with family, but it's just been fascinating, watching all of this unfold. And I think for today, we're quite excited to just look a little bit more at the detail and how we can unlock a couple of things, specifically from a defensive perspective, from a South African side, and obviously the attack in New Zealand. But yeah, quite excited for today, Steve.
Yeah, well, I think we talk about the detail. It's all going to be about detail this weekend, and we're already seeing coaches kind of come out and almost mention certain things that they want referees looking at, and I think that we're going to see. I mean, we talk about the finest of margins. This weekend's all going to be about margins, and I think we're looking at an All Black side that scored lots of points on the tour so far, and yeah, I think both teams know how to score points. The trick will now be to who can kind of keep each other as a shutout. So for those of you who are new to the show, basically we have three segments, and what we're going to be doing is a completely educational show. We're going to be understanding the game, locking in on the detail, and then educating the audience as much as possible. If you would like to get even more information, please do become a member. It is the pinned comment as well as in the description, and you can get access to the presentation that we're going to take you through and any sort of extra stuff that we do, all available to our members. So shout out to our members who are supporting the show and the channel in general. Right, Renaldo, what do you have for us? Where we starting?
Absolutely. And I think, Steve, as you rightfully mentioned, our main objective of our show is to obviously just provide people with an unlocked package, and that's obviously understanding. Now, we need to understand the context of where this rivalry comes from for us to be able to really, have a big, perspective of it, but also understanding where this greatest rivalry come from. Obviously, the clarity in terms of blueprints has always been what distinguishes South Africa from New Zealand, and I think the All Blacks are similar to South Africa after the 2018 season, where they're now on an upward trajectory again. So All Blacks are basically looking to reclaim the aura in the shadow of South Africa's dynasty at the moment. And I think you've personally experienced, the tension and everything, as you've mentioned, just around the training camps, because South Africa, for a long time has been kind of the benchmark. So maybe if you don't mind, maybe just tell us a little bit about what you saw just from a All Blacks, reclaiming their dynasty type of aura, just so we can understand, is the Springboks still, going to be the ones that are on top of their game, or do we see a bit of a change there, Steve?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think everyone at the moment is so aware that the Boks have been the trendsetters and have been the number one side, and I think what's been different with this Boks side is the fact that they've been able to adapt. Yes, they still got their core parts, but it's unfair to say, and simplistically, they don't have extra parts to their game. And what I think we then saw was we saw a Boks side really rise into a different level at a time where we saw an All Black side drop off. And I'd said this last year, and even kind of going into this weekend, I'm starting to get it a bit more again. But I'll go back 5-6 years ago, and we were so scared to play the All Blacks. There was such a nervousness. But in the last couple of years, there hasn't been that like an impossible task kind of feel, where every time we came up against them, it was like, this is the team that you just can't beat. Whereas in the last couple of years, they felt more beatable because they've been beaten. Several times by Argentina. They were beaten by Ireland a couple of times. We've beaten them quite a few times. So it's definitely, I think it's definitely shifted. But that's what this whole rivalry is about, because it shifted from the All Blacks in 2011, 2015, who were untouchable, to a Boks side in the last 12, 18 months have felt a little bit to a certain degree untouchable. Yes, they'll lose games, but you just feel that if when they pitch up, they just do seem a complete level above.
No, absolutely, Steve, and thanks for touching on that, because we've got three big things that kind of sets a benchmark, and that's from a physical perspective. Can you be physically dominant? South Africa set the benchmark there. The power game, we've seen that. Tactically, South Africa has got an immense amount of resources in terms of their backroom coaching staff. the likes of Felix Jones, as well as Jaco Paper that we've seen in the media, just discussing things, but also from a mental benchmark as well. There's total clarity. Players have got identity. Sia comes out and he talks, to the media and everyone else and gives that clarity. And again, it's about, do we foresee this weekend's game going to the favor of South Africa because of this structure they've built, or have New Zealand, as they've shown over these past three games they played against the provincial team, have they got their mojo back, and do they have their physical benchmark, their tactical benchmark, and their mental benchmark back? I kind of feel like it. But we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that a little bit later, Steve. I do want to ask you this question, though, Steve. Do you think that the media is still creating this illusion that there's a big disparity between the two, or is it a lot closer than what it actually is?
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely, even going back to Tour 2023, where no one gave the All Blacks a chance. And I mean, Ian Foster has spoke about the fact that they were like gunning for him the entire time. And I mean, Ian Foster was, as you see there, 2 points away from being a World Cup winner as head coach. But the narrative was never really that he was as good as Hansen, or that he was taking him and forward. And there's definitely been a narrative building that the Boks kind of have that untouchable streak that the All Blacks last year. And I mean, the New Zealand media is quite brutal. It's an interesting. We've seen that quite a bit in the last couple of years. It's similar to when we play against England, for example. You see a whole different type of journalism. And what's the difference is that Rassie is kind of, and Jacques in particular, especially during his tenure, they came out and really tried to embrace the media and try to sort of make friends to a certain degree and not try and take on the media. And you buy by your favor. And all of a sudden, if you lose, but you've got the media on your side, the media will run with it to a certain degree. And not to say they're not going to criticize you, but they'll, you buy a bit of credit. And I think that there wasn't that credit that the All Blacks coaches have had. Dave Rennie being brand new, completely new into the system, versus a Hansen who was there with Graham Henry, and a Foster who was there with Hansen. We've now had like a bit of a press reset. There's only one coach still here who was here a couple of years ago. So I do think there's a little bit of credit that Dave Rennie will have. But at the same time, I think everyone's so aware that the All Blacks are up here. And if you're not going to be up here, then you're kind of down here. There's almost like no middle ground. If they're not the complete best in the world, it's just people aren't talking about them and probably giving them the respect they do deserve. Because even when they've been, in inverted commas, bad, they've never dropped out of the top 3-4 in the world.
Yeah. No, spot on, Steve. I like what you said there, and I think what we'll do is, just for our subscribers, we'll give a little bit more insight in terms of just the way in which I call it the imitation trap, as to see how those two different identities kind of work together, and just the rivalry diagnostics that we've put together as a Rugby Unlocked show for them. And you've touched on fantastic points. So that's the reality that I think a lot of people face with. And we'll leave it at that, Steve. I like the questions that you said there. And I don't mind. If you don't mind, let's go to the next segment, which is us obviously locking in on the specific information.
Yeah. So I think for everyone who would like to go into more, that's why I said, join the members club. We send out this presentation and they can go. And the idea is that on Saturday, have it with you, print it out, and look and maybe think and just try and give you a bit of a different perspective as to how we view the game, in terms of when we say that tactical uncertainty, or that, when things are going badly, what do you default to? And that's where the clarity that South Africa have is very, very evident. Go back to Eden Park last year, where we almost broke that curse. Even when we felt like we were down and out, the bombs were coming on. You knew we had a plan. I think everyone is very comfortable in that plan. So go and check out the presentation. Go and join the members club and get access to it, because it just gives you a bit of a different perspective. But Renaldo, now we're going to really lock into what we're going to see this weekend, which, I mean, the conditions up here are gorgeous. It is 25, 26 degrees. It's dry. You couldn't ask for better conditions for a proper running game this weekend.
Absolutely. And Steve, maybe with that running game being said, New Zealand have been traveling across, South Africa, different provinces. They've played in different areas. I don't know if you want to maybe just paint the picture a little bit clearer before I go into the defense part of it, because there's a bit of a big threat there. New Zealand have been scoring points galore. Steve, do you want to maybe just tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, 140 odd points across the last 3 games, and the big thing I think for them, a big positive would have been the Sharks shutout, but they've also conceded a bit of points. But I think the main thing is we are seeing the New Zealand that we grew up watching in terms of being able to score tries from anywhere. I mean, even on Saturday, where I thought at times they were a bit sloppy, because if you go look at the knock-on stuff like that, it's an interesting, because I think this tour has in many ways been characterized by New Zealand's skill set. And yet, if you go and look at some of the knock-on stats and stuff like that, they've left points out there, despite averaging, I think it's like 6, 7 or 8 tries every game.
Absolutely. And Steve, what I want to do is have built like a pyramid here that just show the specific way in which a New Zealand team would have approached these different games, but also from our unlocked perspective, and also where we are locking into what is it going to take for South Africa to try to not have the same picture that the other provincial teams have seen? Obviously, we understand there's different teams that are selected in the provincial teams. They don't have their best players because they're playing national in the national training group. I mean, we, for example, know, and this may be some insider info, but we know that the group that stayed behind, that didn't do it to Argentina, they had hell week last week and the week before then, because they worked hard to try and be as match fit and as match ready as they can be in order to obviously produce a phenomenal game against New Zealand this coming weekend, as well as the next 2 games in Africa, with the fourth one being away. So just for our fans and everyone here, Steve, what I've done is here, just put the pyramid in such a way with the underlining theme here, which says New Zealand cannot just simply run around South Africa. The forwards must do their hard work first to unleash the All Blacks' traditional strength, which we will discuss. So our theme for today is obviously looking at the defense part, and the defense part from a South African point of view. But in order for us to address that, we need to understand what is it that is traditional, but also new to the New Zealand attacking game. So there, right at the top there, the result is what they look for at the very core. And in the board session, we'll discuss a little bit more detail and tactics that can be looked at. But for them, it's defend or beating the defenders and scoring opportunities. They want to stretch the defense as far as they can with their, obviously their backline players, but also their forwards. So they play the entire width of the field with very good decoy runners that come in and through. But they also have this multiplier situation where they offload at very key moments within the contact position. So their speed, their skill, their decision making, as well as their forward mobility. And I think a guy like Ethan de Groot, I know some people say that there's talks of him coming to South Africa in the future, Steve. I don't know if you can confirm or deny that. But Ethan, for example, has got such good soft skills, and he's able to, in that pot system, make the passes out the back and work through those different tiers and build phases. And here's the non-negotiable part of a New Zealand attack. They love to win the collision. They love to be dominant in the scrums, and they love to also have lineouts, which is very good in terms of setting them for up for gain line advantage, basically. So that is what a South African team is going to be facing this coming weekend, and our job is to try and just give you, as the viewer and people obviously that will watch this, and then everyone that's just logged in, to understand how do we kind of break down this particular tempo.
Yeah.
Steve, with these prerequisites that we've kind of highlighted here from a tempo perspective, obviously, you have got forwards in the New Zealand squad. And particularly, I want to talk about Ethan de Groot and the way in which there's been obviously a lot of spotlight, and attention that has been honed in on his ability to actually manipulate and identify space, similar to a Cody Taylor, and how people have just viewed them. So maybe you can just give us some insight there in what you might have seen throughout your week that you've kind of spent with the New Zealand.
Yeah, the one thing that's always been quite interesting is you look at when we go to training, we get the final block, and basically what they do is all training sort of sessions sort of are defined into different blocks, and then we kind of go and they have a final block, and sometimes we've been there where they've had 2 or 3 blocks, and it's all about detail, so it's the backs can go do a bit of kicking, some of the hookers can potentially go and work on hooking and the whole breakfoot thing and stuff like that. And you can just go basically work on the detail. And what's always been interesting is how often the sort of small skill set parts are worked on. And this is why I think we've been speaking about how players these days, even in a box sort of sense point of view, you can't just be good at your one thing. And your primary job is always the most important. But having a player like Ethan de Groot, who's got the ability to find space, to pick out a pass, I think somebody, it's the soft skills really that we're starting to see more and more players kind of come in, because all of a sudden, I mean, we go back 15, 20 years and you don't want to criticize any of those specific players, but players were far more, I think, one-dimensional in terms of this was my role, this is what I had to do. And the minute that player could do a bit more, it was like quite a shock. Whereas these days, it's now expected. As a prop now, it's not just, you look at Zach Porthen, yes, he can scrum well, but his value now is the fact that he's got a running game, that apparently he's got a flip and step now these days, but it's the soft skills, I think, which are really starting to unlock, because all of a sudden you've got more options, where instead of having to worry about having your 10 as the only distributor, you can now play to a prop, play to a hooker, play to anyone, and they've got the ability to, as we've always mentioned about the bailing out or like, so that they can make those decisions and make the right decisions.
No, absolutely, Stephen. You're spot on there. And I think for a New Zealand team touring South Africa, obviously, here's the nice part of it, Steve, is the fact that, the All Blacks have got these beautiful things in the arsenal, but as a South African, now we're putting our South African hat on. How do we make sure we kind of, build an antidote for that, in one part they've got clarity, but also they've got uncertainty in a lot of other places. I mean, at the moment, and you might just give a little bit of feedback there, at fullback, they don't know who they're going to pick at fullback. I heard rumors the other day that, they've got Lima Sipoanga lurking in the background, might putting on a jersey. But for our fans here, I just want to lock us into understanding. When you look at the game on Saturday, try and identify the following. Try and see if, for example, you can identify how South Africa, one, identify that the All Blacks are suffering from tactical uncertainty in a lot of places. They move the ball a lot, but they create a lot of chaos. How can we, with our board session, as we're going to do a bit later, how can we get, one, a jackler in at first phase to try and get that ball stolen? Two, try and make sure that we have good clarity in terms of our hits. And three, how are we able to, for example, slow their ball down effectively when tackle is made? How do we hold that ball for 3 or 4 seconds in order for them to not have that continued same side or the reverse play? Because the solution for us is going to lie in the following, and I'm sure Felix would have spoken to the guys about that, is that, they lack tactical clarity. We need to disrupt them. And we need to make sure that they don't have any time to try new tricks, because they are dangerous when they are able to just play freely and they are, in that flow state of theirs. And so we need to create chaos for them from a attacking perspective. So our defense need to create their attack to become chaotic. And the bridge there will be a situation where they have obviously done their board sessions, but Felix has probably done the following. He's looked at, obviously, what is the reality for our personnel that we need to pick? What is the specific attack, defense, and the kicking style that we're going to adapt there? And again, Steve, I want us to hone in on the following part. So the New Zealand attacking structure, we see this often here, and it's a little bit other way around, but this is what they do phenomenally well. One, their ball carrier is always ahead of their two support runners, but then they've got a bailout third guy, which is Damien McKenzie, as well as either Rumor Love, or you'll have, in certain parts, you'll have other Geordie, or maybe one of the other guys that are just in and around there. So they always have their 13 also lurking there. Their main priority is to try and run on your outside shoulder. And you would see here, but they'll have breakdown set up, but then their third runner there, they always work hard to get on the outside there and try and beat you on that outside shoulder, because they want to exploit the space on the wide with a skip pass or a cross-field kick. Because in their mind, if they get that gain line there, they have beaten your defensive system. So we need to do one, good solid double hit. Two, we need to get the jackal in there. And three, if we can't get those two first things, we need to slow their ball down so that we can work harder and harder and harder. our lines. Yeah, yeah. Must I go back?
I think it's very important there, Ren, is so just on that, we're talking about the jackal and the likes of that, is that Felix Jones yesterday spoke about the All Blacks tactics of the breakdown. And there's been a lot of controversy now about Dave Rennie and kind of the no arms clear out and how they've been taking out. And I think, again, there's now a flagging from the box in terms
Yes.
of watch the clean outs. And all of a sudden, just that narrative means that the All Blacks, they might sit there and say, guys, they're talking nonsense, do what you want to do. But that split second of hesitation on the day, if you're going to have a Paul de Villiers starting, for example, who is not fit, we expect to see to happen, that split second of, hang on, I need to make sure, or that bit of doubt, that's where we're going to allow all of a sudden the breakdown to be a bit more one-sided. So again, that's where everything that's being said at the moment,
Absolutely. And you know what's beautiful about that point that you just made there, Steve, is that team selection becomes such, and I want to talk about the coaches as well that are in the room or listening to this, wherever you're going to get our content from. When you select your personnel, you do look at the scenarios that can obviously unfold on a specific weekend. We know, as we've said earlier on in the segment, New Zealand would love to score points. If they don't have the ability to score points, they almost come in a default segment where they become uncreative. You want your opposition, your attacking team that you're playing against, you want them to be as uncreative as they can, because that means that they can't test or exploit any of your defensive systems. And a good way, Steve, to do that is by having something called line speed. If and this is the second part that is very important for all of our viewers and everyone watching in there. You want to stop the important part, as I mentioned here. We want to put the stop momentum, win the collision, and dedicate the breakdown. If you dictate what happens at the breakdown, you control what happens next. So again, one coaching point here that we need to remember: a lot of guys don't practice this. Maybe do this. We want you to understand this. Focus on the double hit. Now, what does a double hit mean? A double hit means where two players are making sure that ball carrier that has the ball in front there, if it's the Groot or wherever, if there's a pass that go to left or right, or he carries it, one has got to go nice and low, other one on the sternum, and just suffocate that ball there. Tackle him back, drive him, and you've seen this in a lot of the coaching sessions that they've had. I mean, there was this clip that Hanekom and those guys where the one pulls the elastic band back and has the shield and the cleaner cleans over him. But you've got to tackle the guy back. If you do that, you trigger a specific issue there where you move the gain line. So your line speed is to move their gain line back. You happy with that, Steve?
Yeah. And the Boks
Yes,
the Boks
the
lead
Boks
the dominant
lead.
tackles last year.
Yeah,
So that's how important it is. You know, we talk about like, oh, you know, why are the Boks the best in the world? Oh, because they got a good scrum. It's these minor details. No, things like the dominant hits means that these are the
yes.
are the positive gains that we're finding outside
Correct.
the
And
obvious.
specifically with the New Zealand that wants to attack, the more you use remember we spoke earlier on about what systems we use in terms of, our dominance we've created. One is our physicality, second, our tactical ability, and thirdly, our psychology. So those three things and I've always loved it when defense coaches have got, the time to talk, because they're always like, you've got to lock in. That's why we as Rugby Unlocked give you these tools to help you understand when you watch the game, like Steve said, when you're writing down your notes, or when you are coaching your team. How do you make sure that first and foremost you understand how the defensive system works, but also how do you break down an attacking shape? And there's four things that I think, Steve, from what we just said, that we just want to summarize before we go to our next segment. But it's the four systems and the responses to that defense. And I'm just going to take everyone individually and just chat about that.
The blitz, because this is obviously a very South African thing that was kind of like, Jacques Nienaber was known as was the pioneer in vertical of doing it international.
So if South Africa were to beat New Zealand this weekend, your blitz has got to be an important thing. So, and that's something that is deployed to suffocate the ball carrier behind the gain line. And make your notes here. See how many times, and we want you guys to, in the comment section, tell us, see how many times can South Africa allow or your defenders to suffocate the ball carrier behind the gain line. Then the second part, if they do not get to do that blitz, then we look to the drift ones. How are we able to deploy, and make sure that in our wider channels we have enough of our, so we call it something called wings on strings. Another good thing that you can watch out for in our next segment or our next episode, Steve, where we'll talk about the kicking as well as the back three. But if the ball gets moved so that out the back pass is made, do our 13, our 14, and fullbacks know how to protect our edge? I remember, yes, when we used to be coached by Franco and those guys, yes, it was so hectic because back in the day, you're 13, you're 14, oh no, you don't have to worry about breakdowns, you don't have to clean. The most contested breakdowns are on the outside. Because if you lose that contestable breakdown on the outside, you've basically lost your entire momentum. Hence why so many coaches are scared to play wide, because can that winger defend there and can they clean? And this is where it's so important.
And I think that's why we're seeing previously, we at one stage there's a big sort of trend of a lot of wings going into centers. We're starting to see a little bit of the opposite at the moment. I mean, yes, Canan Moody's been playing a lot of rugby at 13 for the Boks, but look how Ethan Hooker, he comes through as he's a center, but because of his aerial threat and because of his physicality and because of his size, everybody spoke. I mean, initially you're thinking, oh, he's an Andre Estes, he could be a hybrid player, and yet even the Russ talks about him as a center. He basically played in the wing.
So for our side, what we're trying to tell all the viewers and stuff, and I echo that, Steve, is that you must be able to do both. You must be able to understand when to blitz, and you must be able to understand when to drift and close that window on the outside. If you can't do that, those inside balls. So if a player plays wide, I mean, we saw the try that was scored by the Bulls. I think they scored try scored by the All Blacks against the Bulls. I think they scored 3 of them, where ball was moved to the outside. The winger comes and covers, but the catch-up defense was not there. Yeah. The guys were just lazy, not able to catch up, and inside ball. So the South Africa's got to work hard. If we don't get the blitz right, we've got to be able to see that inside passes that will be there.
Just if anybody's watching it, so watch this weekend.
Yes,
like watch Jesse Creel. Like that's good. And then if you're a Lions fan, watch Henko van Wyk and Mooi van den Berg. In terms of, you talk about the support play, watch where they make a lot of their tackles. So that's where I always see it, because again, it's that inside ball. Who's there? Who's making the call as well? Who's saying, okay, Kirkley, make the run, or I've got him, you do this. They're your outside center these days. Well, not always been, but in terms of the drift defense, it's become so important, and that's why having a bit of raw pace from a Bok point of view at 13 is also incredibly important. And somebody the other day tried to tell me that Jesse Creel was slow, and I said, my man, are you on drugs? Go and watch that try he scored against the Wales. He is
absolutely, Steve. I can't agree with you more there, because it's the reality of the following. The world is of rugby, and again, we're talking about how can New Zealand challenge us in such a way that they kind of take over the dynasty of being the greatest again. And it's these two different philosophies that will come against each other more and more as we see these tests unfold. And just on the second category there, I want to let people just some homework for you guys to watch this weekend. Just watch the 1-3-3 system and the 1-2-4-1-4-2 system. Now, how this works is, look at how many times for All Blacks set up where they've got the scrum off. So you've got a breakdown, then the scrum off has got an option of playing a ball carrier with 2 guys behind him, and then a guy lurking at the back, and the next breakdown, it's the exact same. Or a situation where they've got 4 players involved in that first part, meaning why we use 1 is it's the one person that's passing the ball, so that's just the start of it. So then you've got 4 options where and you will see it in New Zealand, they've got 4 runners that come to you where that option can be passed right in front of, and this is the beauty of the way in which just Roygaard and the guys have just come to their fore. You're able to pass the face of the first 2 runners to that third guy, and he's got the 4th guy on the outside. Just look at how many times they do that in the midfield, because that's where we've found lacking in the past. And that's for us the part of locking in on what is important for this upcoming rivalry, and just understanding that part there as well. Steve, we're going to go into the educational part in a short while, but I do think that for us is a very good way to just show all of our fans and everyone that watches here the blitz, the drift, understanding the role of the double hits, the jackler, as well as understanding when to not concede penalties on those particular parts.
Yeah, well, there we go. For all our members, go, as I said, and if you're watching this, I mean, you are one of our members, go and check out the entire presentation, go and get through it all. And we're going to head into the educational section here, Renaldo, and go and see exactly kind of what defensive systems look like and the likes of that. I mean, we can go on for hours, and if you can go on for hours, become a member, go and check out. We will have the links in the description, or to our sort of educational database that we are currently building. And you're going to be able to hopefully down the line in the next couple of months get a full bank of just rugby knowledge. And you can just choose how much to consume, whether you want to continue being not ignorant, but just watching it at a more basic surface level, which is sometimes quite nice. But if you want to really start getting into the nitty-gritty of the things and starting to really try and jump into the Professor Dr. Erasmus mind and the likes of that, then this is the kind of things you can kind of look at and get into. But Ren, let's get into education, shall we? Welcome to the educational segment of Rugby Unlocked. And previously we have broken down things such as kicking tactics, such as attacking shapes, and now we're going to be doing the defensive shape. So we've got basically, so if you haven't watched, go check out last week's episode, which had the attacking shape. And we're starting with what Renaldo explained in terms of the 79 line out. But now we're going to be looking at what it looks like from a defensive point of view and a bit of a general idea of what your defensive system looks like off the back of a line out and the likes of that. If you'd like to get more detail, then please make sure you become a member, because we've got a whole lot of extra stuff over and above that we do make available to our members as well. Renaldo,
lovely.
Teach me how to defend.
Stevie and everyone watching, thank you so much for joining us. So obviously, you'd like to obviously first shut down any form of attack space. So from a defensive perspective, you want to prevent them from scoring. That is your main objective. That's the only thing that you get taught when Jacques Nenauer talks to you in the Springbok camp, or when Willie there in Kuruman, when he explains to you, he'll say, defense, defense, defense. Willie, that's for you. Okay, cool. So 79 line out is probably the option that most attacking teams will use in this space. Why? Because they would like to have their big ball carriers here in the midfield, just try and take on this gain line here. So they're obviously attacking forward. So this gain line, and I'm just going to maybe do it in black here, so that everyone can see. The gain line, if you don't know what it is your ability as the attacking team to have moved the defense beyond their vantage point. So everyone's got a vantage point. I've got mine. I'm 10 meters away in the line out and 5 meters away from the scrum, for those that don't know. But the vantage point is if I can move your territory, basically, if I can gain more territory by taking away yours, that's obviously what a gain line is.
Once you have a rack, you can almost basically say it's like almost within the line of the rack converter commas. That generally often becomes your gain line as a reference point.
Yeah, so the gain line from before the ball is even played is basically your 10-meter line.
Yeah.
We can just use this. So this is where the attacking team, you want to get beyond this gain line. That's basically where you want to get. Basically, that's where you want to outwit your attacking team. So what we're just going to talk through here, Steve, is just about, so they've got to obviously decide they're going to go for a 79 line out, which is a back ball. So what they're going to do is this hooker here is going to try and throw the ball and try and get it right at the back of the line out. Why at the back of the line out? It's the easiest way for an attacking team to catch the ball at the top. You've seen Argus Snyman, as well as, you know.
I can't imagine you will lift it too many times.
No, thank goodness not. But then obviously nice and high throw off the top means the ball is at the top of the line out, thrown down into the scrum half's hands here, and they obviously get to play into this vacuum here.
Yeah.
So when they're playing to that vacuum there, you obviously have got what they call a jackler, which is someone that is dedicated to try and steal the ball.
Yeah, 100%.
100%. And that jackler comes into play when you've got a dominant hit, or maybe a double hit. And then that's when you kind of prevent them from getting gain line.
Interesting stat, 2025, the Springboks led in dominant tackles.
Correct.
By a long way in the world.
Absolutely. Who makes better tackles? Just out of curiosity.
What, within the Springboks or?
No, just generally. Who are the better defenders in your team?
Well, usually the forwards, but often it's statistically interestingly a lot. Your obviously locks make big tackles. Last year, I know Sia Khaleesi tops those stats, so a lot of the flanks, and then your 12 and 13. Well, dominant tackles often 12s, 13 often covering tackles.
Nice, yeah. Your body weight. So the
Yeah,
one that's
the
you
big
know
guys,
the
big
heavier
boys.
guy, obviously kind of will dominate. But the most important person is the one that understands tackle technique. And that's something that we'll give to you guys as an exclusive. What is the right body position for you as a defender so that you don't get your legs broken or
knocked out,
or knocked out, or run over? So the person that knows how to tackle, that's the most important tackler, because Andre Pollard can tackle. There's a lot of guys that can tackle because they're not the biggest, but they know how to tackle. So the idea is your back line will basically be flat here. Your scrum off is what they call in the trenches here. You've got on that side there, you'll have your 14 right at the back there, and then you'll have your 15 there, you'll have your 11 riding here. We'll talk about wings on strings in another segment. I think that's a very important structural change there, why they have an influence there. But today we want to focus on the defenders in terms of the guy that makes the tackle and the jackler. Those are the two important guys in your defensive system, because if they get it wrong, your folding system is completely out of shape.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about those things. So the jackler, tackler, and then who folds. So obviously the attack wants to get a nice dominant carry here. If your line speed is as good as the Springboks line speed at the moment, these guys here will push up in a nice straight line. So obviously they'll wait for the trigger. The trigger is when the ball is released down. So school kids out there, people not knowing what a trigger is, if the ball is passed, basically that means it's fair play.
Yeah, because that's where the offside line goes. And that's where, just a reference, if you want to go back and check, and when the Springboks tried something, Vusi Moya broke on the attacking time, but he broke too early and broke the offside line.
Exactly.
So once that goes down, then it's basically fair play.
Absolutely, yeah. So typically speaking, because it's a 79 line out, you also have an advantage of having your whichever number you decide to go out. And this is where normally you have your jackler. As a defender or as a defending team, they can have their 8th man out here.
Yes.
But if your jackler is your number 7, and even your hooker, Malcolm Mark sometimes does not defend in the line out if we want a ball steal. Does it make sense? So you have your best jacklers. So I'm going to just say jackal there, or jackler, that's what we call them. That's the person that's normally right here on the inside. Because if the ball is shifted here and this breakdown takes place here, he's the first person who's got what we call rights to the ball. So you nice dominant tackle, so you're 12 and you're 10 or you're 13, they'll work nice and hard to try and meet them here or even meet them here. Because the more line speed you apply, the obviously further back you are. And then obviously that breakdown becomes a very contentious thing. So you try and jackal that ball there. So nice, good leg tackle. So nice and low. Again, like we said, we'll speak about that in a different segment. So your idea is to try and get that jackler in there. If you can't get that ball stolen or get a penalty, what do you do, Steve? If I'm there in the ruck, what am I doing?
Well, hopefully you release the ball first of all. Yeah. But then obviously it's about getting out and getting yourself part of the defensive line.
Yeah, but I'm slowing the ball down. That's the first thing I'm doing. I'm not getting
at the breakdown.
So at the breakdown. So if I am the jackler and I go in there, remember, so we're talking about what is the reason for us to try and prevent the attacking team from going forward. It's a big double lead. So first double lead.
Yeah.
Jackler try and steal the ball. If you can't steal the ball, I've slowed it down.
Yeah.
That means all of these guys that have tried to, in their gameplay, try to come this side here, will sometimes overrun. Have you guys seen how stupid some scrum offs look when they're there with the ball and then, or the ball is not out yet and those guys have already come around. So then your pod system gets out of sync. Yeah. So the ball slowed down there obviously helps a lot with that. What you also do is, if you slow that ball down, you give your forwards time to reset. Because then obviously your wing would have pushed up here. If they played the ball into that space there, they play either another one there. Wing is pushed up there. Then obviously your scrum off here would have called either this guy that has either come that way or he stayed there back into the defensive line here. Main point that I want to try and make with this here, Steve, is that if that ball was slowed down and the jackler doesn't have a successful one there, ball being slowed down here, your defense is set, even if they do retain the possession.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. So the entire point of this entire thing is, what are your outcomes? And what do you want to achieve? So as you said, you want to achieve a turnover. Now we've got the ball. A penalty. Now we can go and do what I want. Or else, at the very least, but still a successful thing is if you slow the ball enough time that the defensive line is set. Yes. Then theoretically, your defense coach is sitting there going, tick.
Correct.
We've done the job. I think that's probably the main thing is, if your defensive point of view, what is our goal for this whole situation? And if that results in them kicking it downfield, now you've got a line out, for example, or the likes of that, then you've said, cool, we've done our job.
Exactly.
Ideally.
You've defended your territory.
Yeah.
And what you do is then, they can build phases, so they can try and do their phase play, which is okay. But their phase play cannot, literally, they cannot play more than 10 without the coach saying, you should have kicked the ball.
Yes.
You either should have done something different, you've run out of ideas and whatever. I don't know how many times on commentary you would hear the attack or the commentators say, oh, the attack has run out of ideas. It's not that they've run out of ideas, is that what you have done as a defense is that you've literally just given them no opportunity to be creative. So obviously, yeah.
And I mean, we have seen the Boks defending many phases that go back to that 2023 World Cup.
So important, just for a recap, Steve, is that important, your line speed first as a defensive structure, but also who you have in your defensive line is important. You don't have to match them in terms of their line of defense. If they're going to maul, then fair enough. But you want to have your best ball stealer, your jackler. You want to have them in the back line.
Good tacklers.
And your good tacklers that are good defenders there, because if there's a line break there, then
You're
it's
done.
gone for you. Yeah.
And that's where often this person's always trying to find the 10. You talk about always want to try to find the 10, and that's where, I mean, a 10 that can defend is obviously gold. But again, your 12 is always so important.
Absolutely.
Because they'll be looking at the 12 and Damien's going to say, it's fine, I'm going to hit you before you even get to.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, there we go. Masterclass on defending. Obviously, a lot more to it, which will break it down. But that's kind of the basics that if you kind of understanding what you're looking to try and achieve. And the whole point of this is just when you watch rugby, now you can kind of sit there. It's actually sometimes we're into it a bit, when you start getting overanalyzed. But you can then sit there, okay, cool. So the defense worked in that system because X, Y, Z did happen.
Absolutely.
Lovely.
Yeah. Awesome.
Cool. Renaldo, thank you very much for going to the defense. And again, become a member, get access to even more stuff that Renaldo's doing. We're building up basically our whole course of how to learn and how to understand rugby. So the idea is that you guys, by the end of it and throughout it, will become better watchers, give yourself something to chat about in the pub. If you've got a young player, if you are a coach, if you are a player, then you can give some information and make sure that you're as knowledgeable as possible. So thanks, Ren, and looking forward to the next one.
Perfect. Thanks, Steve.